Hi, welcome to Murf Unfiltered. I'm Kathleen Murphy, your host, and I'm here today with a very special guest and someone that I've been really looking forward to bringing on for a long time. A very dear friend of mine who is an exceptional person in so many ways. Her name is Susan Gonya, and this is going to be a two-part series. So be sure to check out the second series part for this particular Murf Unfiltered as well. So welcome, Susan. How are you?
Thank you. I appreciate the nice welcoming.
Oh my gosh.
Good today, and I really am so excited to be here with you.
Good. I'm so happy that you are. And I'm going to make this official because you are so impressive. I have to tell people about your background, and we'll hopefully be weaving in more information about that throughout the course of the 2 episodes. But I'm going to just dive in and officially greet you, even though I did so in the warm-up here. So meet Susan Gonya, a licensed dietitian nutritionist and registered nurse with over 30 years of experience in pediatric and adult nutrition. Her work has spanned food allergies, inflammatory bowel disease, critical care, and chronic illness, supported by research, conference presentations, and peer-reviewed publications. This is the most important part that when I read this, I was practically brought to tears. Susan's mission turned personal when her son was diagnosed with Crohn's disease at age 8. Determined to help, she uncovered the hidden role of foodborne mold toxins, mycotoxins, in gut health. Through lab testing and recipe redesign, she created a low mycotoxin anti-inflammatory diet that transformed his growth and resolved gastrointestinal symptoms. This journey cemented her belief that food safety and personalized nutrition are powerful tools in protecting health. Her guiding philosophy: let food be thy medicine, not thy poison. And I can say, having met your son, Dylan, wow. He is the picture of health. So everything that you've done since the course of when he was first born and when you first started doing your research to, he's 21 now?
22.
22.
Yes.
Even better. Mm-hmm. He looks phenomenal. So I always like to kind of start out with the who in terms of who is behind this. We've ticked that box off, and I just want to be mindful of the fact that this is what we're talking about today. This is the book that Susan just recently published and brought to everyone that really is going to be quite excited when they get their hands on this. I know I was. But what it is a book that is designed to do something other than just simply have you read it from a story perspective. And so, as I was talking to you earlier, I've been reading the book, and I'm not a science or a health person, so I'm learning new words as I go along. I feel like I'm learning a new language, as I mentioned to you. But I want you to talk about what is the most pressing or important outcome from your findings that people will learn from your book?
So, great question. And I'm sorry that I tried my best to not put really big, difficult words in there. But I've actually been studying this for so long, I think I'm a little blinded to some of those words. But I think the most important outcome from this, because it has been a long journey, is that I think people will find that minimizing dietary mycotoxin exposure will actually have a great and profound impact on their health. I think what will also come out of this is most people don't even know what a mycotoxin is.
I was just going to ask you, can you please
what is
help us with that word?
Right. So mycotoxins are mold toxins, and most people hear about them in terms of their basements.
That doesn't sound good.
Right. There's a huge body of science surrounding airborne mold toxins and sick house syndrome. For example. So when I started researching this, I was completely unaware that these things could be in our food as well.
Right.
Mycotoxins are mold toxins that are produced by fungi and mold that can contaminate crops and grains and nuts and processed foods, and you can't see them, smell them, or taste them. So finding them was a difficult thing to do. And when we did start to look at this in terms of research, both academically and in a laboratory setting, we found that they were far more abundant than we had originally thought. So we methodically focused on one set of mycotoxins initially 8 years ago. And as soon as I started to pull this gut-wrenching mycotoxin out of their diet. The name of this mycotoxin is actually called vomit toxin.
I read that and I thought, gosh, that's either a really inappropriate word or one that you're never going to forget.
You're never going to forget. Yeah. And the people use it all the time, even in the medical research.
Oh.
So, and in the animal research. So, and it's because it does what it says.
Right.
It makes you sick. And I thought, wow, my son had been through a lot of this. So when I started to pull it out, he miraculously started to feel so much better. This was a child that we kept going up on his medications, and he was starting.
And he was young.
He was very young. He was 8. Initially, he started bleeding when he was 4 months old.
Oh my gosh.
And we did an elimination diet then. But once we liberalized his diet, he went to school. His growth slowed down. He started to become very sick. He's constantly sick to his stomach, stopped eating. So, I was scratching my head. I cooked everything from scratch, and I thought, wow, I'm a dietitian.
Right.
How can this be happening? I'm really dedicated to healthy eating. But as it turns out, I stumbled across the word vomit toxin, and the rest is history. We dove into it. So I think what people are going to find out is that by just eliminating some of these toxins, and there are many in the food supply. I mean, I started with the 1, and now I look at 34. But when you start to remove them, people do feel so much better.
Oh, that's so good.
He started to grow again.
That is so good.
And
so one of the things I want to make sure that people also appreciate is the fact that this particular book took you quite a while to bring out. And I remember we've known each other since college. We went to the University of Maine, so shout out to the UMaine Black Bears.
Yes.
And I had no appreciation for how much work was going into and what the research level that you were taking this to was going to include. Because I just thought, well, Susan, you're writing a book. Come on, you're writing a recipe book. So I thought, right? I didn't fully comprehend and appreciate the work that was going into this. So your book came out officially
August of 2025, just a month ago.
And it's available online now for people to get through.
On Amazon.
And it's going to be through your website as well, and which is in the process of being launched. And so do you want to give a shout out to your website?
So what the website is, I started a company after doing a lot of research into dietary mycotoxins, publishing some papers, really looking at this carefully. We started a website to raise money for research, called Clean Food Solutions. And on that website, we have some really amazing food manufacturers that are also as concerned as we are about producing clean food and taking care of public health. And so we will offer brands that we're testing regularly. If we see problems, we'll be mitigating it. But the ultimate reason why we started this was not just to continue research, was because you can't see, smell, or taste these toxins. So people...
Which is frightening.
You
don't even know that they're there.
You don't know
the invisible sort of threat.
Sure, you might think that you got food poisoning if you're exposed to a high amount of one or two in particular, maybe multiple. But we designed it to take the difficulty out of people finding clean foods.
Right.
So we're actively working on testing all these foods ourselves for 34 mycotoxins, and these manufacturers are mitigating in their warehouses and everything else and making sure that their food is super clean. So, and hopefully at a reasonable price for the public.
I love that.
So, yeah.
And so you wrote this book not only for Dylan, but there's another person involved in terms of why you wrote this as well, your daughter.
Oh, absolutely. So, I wrote the book initially because I wanted to have a written record for my children of what we did, the science behind it, and why it was important to make these changes. Other things that I found out was I couldn't cook with traditional ingredients. So I wasn't going to be able to scratch a bunch of recipes out on a piece of paper for them.
So let me hold you there for a second and just ask you to clarify when you say traditional ingredients, what do you mean by that?
So I started to really study the grain supply, and I love grains. They were my favorite foods growing up, and I still love grains. They don't love me apparently because if I eat them, I don't feel well. But
can you also just break down grains? You're a
wheat,
nutritionist,
wheat, corn, barley, rye, oats. It seemed that we were finding these fungal contaminants in 100% of what we were testing.
It's a lot of ingredients.
It's a lot of ingredients. So after doing this for 3 years, and during the pandemic, I set up a lab in my basement, and a screening lab, and I was just screening flour after flour, and finally I threw my hands up in the air and I said, I'm going to have to throw all these out.
Oh my gosh.
Can't keep throwing food out.
No.
I can't keep shopping and throwing food out. So what I did was I started to buy non-grain flours and test them. Tapioca, arrowroot, coconut, almond flours, what's in them.
Sure.
And initially when I started testing them using a very nice laboratory that actually I consider to be one of the best laboratories in the country, maybe the world, for looking at these toxins in food. They specialize in this.
Good.
We started to find out that they were not hot. They had none of the contaminants that I was initially looking at that are severe GI upset contaminants. I mean, they will really cause them gut-wrenching problems.
No. Yeah, for people that aren't autoimmune compromised
Absolutely.
or that don't have celiac or Crohn's disease
Correct.
or IBS.
Well, IBS is really not considered an autoimmune reaction. So if somebody with IBS might just be being exposed to these on a regular basis.
And not know it.
And just not know it.
Right, exactly.
Because it definitely causes IBS. So we took them out, and then the trick of that is you can't tell a child, your daughter or your son, that they're no longer going to be able to eat pizza or they can no longer have a Toll House cookie.
Right.
So it was about documenting, coming up with recipes, 20, sometimes I have 108 recipes in there that are finished. It took as many as 20 tries to get it right for some of them. So I wanted to make sure everything was documented so I could pass it on to them. It was sort of my way of giving my children a gift that was a combination of science and research and love all at once.
I just think that's so special.
So
and why now? Obviously, we talked about the fact that it took you some time to do the research. This wasn't an overnight research experiment by any stretch of the imagination. We're talking 7-8 years in the making, right?
It's been just to get me here.
Right, just to get us
There's
here.
more to do. There's a lot more research to continue doing. But
so why now?
Well,
other than me prodding you a lot, probably being past saying,
friends and family,
come on, Susan, when is this book coming out? I can't wait to read it. And I had no idea about the amount of effort that was going on behind the scenes. You were very gracious in not telling me about all of the details relating to it, because I A, wouldn't have understood, and I probably B, wouldn't have appreciated how much time was involved in that. So why now? So what was it that finally got you to the point where you said, okay, I'm ready to release this now? What's happening?
So it was initially from encouragement from people like yourself, and from lots of sick people and sick patients. I had my share of sick patients that were just, they were getting better. My patients were getting better and saying, "Wow, you can't." I took a little break.
Hide this from us.
You can't hide this from everybody. When's the book coming out? When's the book coming out? But then also, I'm a professional member of the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. And I get all of the blogs, and I look and I read the data that says people are getting sicker. More and more young children are developing inflammatory bowel disease.
At what age? When you say young children,
some from birth. And some very, very young children, infants, toddlers.
It's tragic.
So you have to say, what is going on in our food supply? That all this. And so there's a lot going on in our food supply. I'm not going to, pigeonhole and say these are the absolute reason why this is all going on. It's probably a perfect storm of lots of variables that include pesticides, PFAS.
What are PFAS?
Plastics. PFAS are substances that are forever chemicals that end up in our food and our water supply. A lot of them in our water supply. They're harmful. They could potentially be cancer causing. There's lots of food dyes we see in the media all the time that are in our diet. So I'm not going to say that this is the exact answer, the holy grail to solving this problem. But I am going to say that as I moved through, as I started to see the data on how many people are becoming sick in the U.S., right. I thought, well, let me just share my story and see if somebody is interested.
And I remember talking to you also about what is happening in terms of your research. You're doing the research in the United States. Is this kind of research, or are these same kind of problems being mimicked elsewhere in the world? And can you talk about that for just a moment or two, just to kind of give people what I learned was really eye-opening and at the same time shocking and disappointing and so many other adjectives that I won't go into, that I was really quite disappointed by when I heard what you told me.
So hopefully I'm going to answer this correctly. I'm not really sure what I told you. So hopefully this is correct. I'm going to say that in terms of it happening elsewhere in the world, yes, it is.
Okay.
It is on the rise. So diseases like Crohn's disease had their beginnings in the northern regions, where the fungi that I initially started studying were indigenous to. But we have a global economy now.
We do.
And people eat food in every country from all over the world, although a lot of U.S. foods are banned in Europe. But the Europeans are very concerned too. So the rates of Crohn's disease and these gastrointestinal diseases are increasing all over the world. I have a lot of people following me on ResearchGate and communicating with me from Europe. I have a small handful of U.S. physicians that are now finally starting to get interested, but truthfully, the majority of people that are following this research are people from outside of the U.S. at this point. But yeah, I mean, the diseases are out there. Certainly Israel, these diseases are all prevalent all over the world.
And so one of the things that struck me that you told me was that the testing parameters and the testing levels that are acceptable in terms of tolerance for certain toxic aspects in our food system, let's just say, is it fair to say that it's different in the U.S.? We have different standards than, say, let's just pick Europe for right now.
Oh, absolutely. So Europe tends to have much tighter standards on what mold contaminants, mycotoxins, if you will, are allowed in the food supply. Not only have they established tighter regulations, we don't monitor a lot of mycotoxins in our food supply. There are ones that would just be completely not allowed.
Right.
If they were shipped over there, they'd reject. They'd reject the feedlot or whatever they're getting over there, because there's also a number of standards that enable us to plug those numbers into equations and plug the size of the person into the equation and see if they've hit toxic limits. So Europe has already gone so far, and Europe and actually the Netherlands and those regions of the world have actually established what we consider tolerable daily intakes. So how much do you have to eat before you actually become very ill from this?
Right.
And then with a fairly wide margin from animal studies, and they maintain that as part of their guidelines. I use it for research purposes, just to plug in, for example, a toddler's size.
So, are they stricter? Are they looking out for their people, arguably perhaps better than the people in the U.S. with the standards that we have? Are our standards not high enough, arguably, to keep us healthy? And so arguably the standards elsewhere outside of the U.S. are potentially better for humans?
I'm going to say that's absolutely true. That doesn't mean you can't have a high dose in a specific area. I mean, these things do happen. People get food poisoning and can get food poisoning, which this is a form of food poisoning. Anywhere in the world. Certainly, even in your own home, if you leave something out too long and it becomes moldy, right?
Of course.
You're probably not going to feel great.
Well, not only leave it out, but I was reading in your book about, and I've thought about this, but it really hit home for me today when I was thinking about the storage, just even in your own home. Things that you can do to help prevent some of these challenges. Let's just say the food that you're bringing into your home is perfectly sound, doesn't have any issues, but then you bring it into your home and you put it in a place where it might not be the ideal storage location, and then it happens to get moldy in your own home. That's no one else's fault but your own.
Right.
So can you give us an example of what someone might do to perhaps, go about storing their food in a safer way so that some of these toxins don't happen within your own home?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, probably the best answer to that is, the answer that most people don't want to hear is eat fresh whole foods right off the farm, because, you can see when they're going bad, right? Mm-hmm. You can actually see if an apple's got a big bruise on it, or if it's getting moldy, and maybe we're not going to eat that.
What about brown bananas? Is that a telling sign, or is that?
But that's usually the sugar increasing within the banana. It doesn't mean it's moldy. Probably you're going to see visible mold on it, but if it's too brown, I'm definitely throwing it away.
Okay.
So fresh whole
for storage then. I mean, if you're not buying, let's just say, I'm a mom. I was the type of mom that'd be going down all the aisles in the supermarket, which is, I know as a dietitian you hear that and you're cringing, thinking no, you should be shopping on the outsides cafe of the store. That's what I've been told. That's where the healthiest food happens to be, the most natural food and such. But shopping for things such as cereal and bread, pasta, common staples in my household for many, many years when the kids were growing up. Mm-hmm. Is there a better way to store those and or source? We'll get into this a little bit more, but to source those things in a way that isn't going to be problematic to, even if my family doesn't have any challenges from a health perspective.
Well, that's a couple of questions, and all great questions. Absolutely. So just as a point of reference, when my own child became sick, we were also big into the pasta. Who doesn't love pasta?
I know.
Pasta, packaged cereals. Sure. I mean, truthfully, I'm just going to say it, even as a dietitian, who doesn't love Captain Crunch, right? But I did not give my children Captain Crunch. I was giving them other cereals that were considered somewhat more healthy. Unfortunately, though, in the laboratory, what we're seeing is that before it even leaves the supermarket shelf, because we pull them randomly off the supermarket shelf, they are heavily contaminated. I think the least number of molds that we saw in our last batch, we tested 74 snack foods and cereal products and pastas, even baby food, and 73 had at least one mycotoxin. The highest number of mycotoxins was 19.
Oh, gosh.
So that's a significant amount of mold toxin already in that box when it hits the shelf. So I'm not sure any amount of storage is going to help that. And, and I'm not sure how you would store it long term in your refrigerator or anything else. But I can say that what we had to do, which is something that's going to be difficult for most people when it comes to the recipes, is that we not only did we source clean flours, which was not easy. We just studied 47 basic ingredients, and we only found one clean one. We have found 4 clean ones.
Out of 47.
Out of 47.
It's a low percentage.
Yes. And those 4 are going to be on my website, Clean Food Solutions. And those are quality companies that are really doing a good job at keeping things clean. But we store them in a dehumidified freezer.
Okay.
So we store all of our basic baking goods like flours, whether it's an almond flour, whether it's non-grain flours, which tended to be a little bit lower in some of the mycotoxins we were studying. We store them in a dehumidified freezer, and once we're done using them, we put them right back.
Got it. Okay.
We don't leave them. And I did do an experiment at one point where I left some almond flour out for a while to see what would happen. And yes, the mold count increased significantly. So just leaving it out on the shelf. So, and I do notice that manufacturers of almond flour will say, please keep this refrigerated or in the freezer.
Okay.
So they're actually starting to package that way now.
Trying to educate us.
They are.
Right.
A lot of manufacturers are doing a really, really good job. And I think this is probably a good spot to say there are some manufacturers that are doing a pristine job, like, for example, Purity Coffee.
Right.
So there's a lot of coffees advertising no mold in their coffee. I've tested a ton of coffees in my day. And I can tell you that they're mostly testing for 2 toxins that are only one of which is mandated to be looked at by the U.S. government.
Okay.
Both those toxins are looked at in other countries, though. So we look at 34 mycotoxins. And so anybody who joins on board with Clean Food Solutions knows that they're going to be subjected to rigorous testing of 34 mycotoxins.
Which I think is fantastic, and kudos to them.
Kudos to them.
I applaud them for going through that stringent process of being looked at to make sure that their quality control is such that they're keeping people healthy.
It's amazing. The dedication to keeping the public healthy is outstanding. We recently tested 14 samples of Purity coffee, and they were 100% clean.
That's impressive.
But I went to the supermarket and pulled 3 samples off the shelf of name brand coffees. Mm-hmm. They were all moldy. Okay. But they had molds that weren't even being tested for.
Right.
So the molds that the mold-free brands are saying that they're testing for, I'd really like to see a lab report on that.
Sure.
Another company that is absolutely the best company I've ever seen for baking ingredients, grain and non-grain, that also covers off on allergies is Relative Foods.
Okay.
It's a very small company. It's
based out of the U.S.?
They're based out of the U.S.,
nice.
Yes. They're a North American company, and they are so phenomenal. They also cater to those with celiac and other gastrointestinal diseases.
Wonderful.
And they are my heroes because I buy so much from them. So
I'm sure they are. And I'm going to hold us here because we've got part 2 coming up, and we've got lots more to cover. Mm-hmm. So I want to make sure that we have time during our next segment to go through the rest of the questions that I am really excited about asking you. So I want to thank everybody here today for coming to see Murf Unfiltered. Please join us on episode 2 for the next version, where we're going to be talking to Susan Gonya again about the food and what's in it, and hint, it may not be what you think. All right, stay tuned, and we'll see you again shortly. Pop on to the next episode. Thank you, everybody.